mythologies are filled with accounts of dragons, flying serpents, and other strange creatures. In some cultures, these beings represent divine power and are honored as protectors of sacred places. Major religions of the world also share a connection to serpents and dragons. It may be surprising to some, but these beings can even be found in Scripture. So what's the connection between serpent-like dragons and religion? We're going to continue our discussion about the fourth beast from Daniel's vision, its religion and its people. In the last session, we focused on the red dragon symbol used on the Welsh flag. That video is called Who is the God They Worshipped? The link will be in the description for those who may not have seen it. But interestingly, dragons were worshipped in various cultures around the world, to include Egypt. How obvious is this? They had a serpent on the headdress worn by the Egyptian pharaohs. They called it a sacred serpent. So as a reminder, the serpent was synonymous with the dragon in ancient mythological sources. You can also find a reference for that in Revelation 12:9. Let's look at some additional information from this book I shared last time. It's called The Worship of the Serpent, Traced Throughout the World. It was written in 1883 by Reverend John Bathurst. It says, of all the nations of antiquity, none was so infamous for idolatry as Egypt. She was the alma mater of every superstition, conveying with her colonists, wherever they were settled, some corruption of the truth which, under the fostering care of her established priesthood, assumed a form of consistency, all allurement. Among the rest, the worship of the serpent was in her early history an important and conspicuous part of her idolatry. The serpent entered into the Egyptian religion under all his characters of an emblem of divinity, a charm, an oracle, and a god. As an emblem of divinity, the sacred serpent was peculiarly symbolical of the gods Neph and Thoth, and of the goddess Isis, though he entered more or less into the symbolical worship of all the gods. The species of serpent peculiarly dedicated to Isis was the asp. This is seen on the heads of her statues and on the bonnets and sashes of her priests. The tiara of the kings of Egypt was ornamented with the figures of the same reptile. And we also need to make note of the fact that there were other tribes in Africa worshiping the serpent, even our people. They began worshiping the brazen serpent after they entered the promised land. Let's look at this from 2 Kings 18:1-4. Now it came to pass in the 3rd year of Hosea, son of Elah, king of Israel, that Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. 25 years old was he when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name also was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Most High, according to all that David his father did. He removed the high places, and brake the images, and cut down the groves, and brake in pieces, listen, the brazen serpent that Moses had made. For unto those days the children of Israel did burn incense to it, and he called it Nehushtan. So in summary, Yah had sent venomous serpents among the nation to punish them when they were in the wilderness because of sin. Then the Most High told Moses to make a bronze serpent and to put it on a pole so that the Israelites who saw it would be cured and protected from the bites of the fiery serpents. They had to look at the thing that bit them as a reminder of their actions. They were never told to worship it, and it was only for that specific purpose. So we know that worshiping the serpent was sinful because it says here that Hezekiah did what was right by destroying it and the other images. But here's the thing, our people didn't get a pass. They were chastised severely for their continued idolatry. Other nations prospered in their wickedness. We did not. Now we know that they will give an account for it eventually, so we don't have to fret because of evildoers. Their day of judgment will come. We can certainly see that it is fast approaching. So let's dig a little deeper into these serpent-like dragons to see why they were worshipped. We're going to take a look at this article from Ancient Origins entitled Tracing the Origins of the Powerful Serpent Cult. It says, in mythology, the serpent symbolizes fertility and procreation, wisdom, death, and resurrection, due to the shedding of its skin, which is not akin to rebirth. And in the earliest schools of mysticism, the symbol of the word was the serpent. The light that appeared was metaphorically defined as a serpent called Kundalini, coiled at the base of the spine to remain dormant in an unawakened person. Divinity, or awakening one's godhood and latent abilities, came with the rituals and teachings brought by the serpent people. Note it says the serpent people. So you need to know that they credit the serpent with enlightenment and wisdom. And this is why we see them equating the serpent with the word. And we already know that those cults and rituals are not for us, so that's a no. Now it says numerous cultures throughout the world worship the serpent, and they list beings such as Quetzalcoatl and other serpent-like beings in Mexico, Peru, Vietnam, etc. But it goes back to ancient days. They had a snake goddess in Egypt, and the Hittites and Canaanites also had similar deities. So this is pointing back to the mystery religions in Babylon. So the article goes on to say that in India, the serpent beings were known as the Nagin, the children of the Naga king. You all, this is actually a thing in India. They believe these people are a divine or semi-divine race of half human, half serpent beings, as you can see here in the image. But it says several royal families claim lineage through intermarriage in Nagin, including the Manipur, Yadavas, and Pallavas. In Greece, there is a fresco titled Zeus Seduces Olympius, and it depicts Zeus with the head and torso of a human, but the tail of a serpent. Also in France, there is a story about a Melusine, a half-human, half-fish or serpent, who is betrayed by her husband when he did not honor her request to not be disturbed when she took her ritual bath. This is beyond strange, family. But we see that there are those who worship and claim that they descend from the serpent. Where did all of these stories come from? Just take a look at the symbology here. The croziers made like a serpent. This is not new. This goes back to ancient times, all the way back to Babylon. These nations are worshiping the same deity. They just use different names or perform different rituals, but it points back to the serpent. It's safe to say that you can just insert the word dragon here also. It's the same deity. So I want to share this passage from Ezekiel 29, 1 through 3, because there are a lot of hidden truths in Scripture that we often overlook. It says, in the 10th year, in the 10th month, in the 12th day of the month, the word of the Most High came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Pharaoh king of Egypt, and prophesy against him, and against all Egypt. Speak and say, Thus says the Most High Yah, Behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh king of Egypt, the great dragon that lieth in the midst of his rivers, which has said, My river is mine, and I have made it for myself. So this is a prophecy against Egypt. The Septuagint also used the word dragon in this verse. So whatever you choose to call it, it's some type of sea monster. And here you see pride and arrogance. It says, My river is my own. I have made it for myself. This was the proud boasting of this dragon and the Pharaoh of Egypt. Now let's look at that word in the Strong's lexicon. The word is tenin, and it can be a dragon, serpent, or sea monster. It's often translated as dragon in the New Testament, particularly in the book of Revelation. So the Hebrew word tenin is used in the Bible to describe large, formidable creatures often associated with the sea or wilderness. It is translated variously as dragon, serpent, or sea monster in English. The term conveys a sense of power and mystery, often symbolizing chaos or opposition to Yah's order. Who's opposing the Most High's order? The serpent. And as you can see here, front and center, he's prominently displayed in a lot of European iconography, and few people question it. I'm going to show some other images found in religious buildings like basilicas and cathedrals, and even in places of higher learning. There is absolutely no mistaking this one right here or here, front and center. Now keep in mind that these are supposed to be places of worship. Well, who are they worshiping? It's certainly not the Most High. You all may have seen this one. This is City Hall in Munich, Germany. They needed a huge dragon on the side of the building. Why exactly? Another form of it are the gargoyles. Gargoyles. This is found on Notre Dame Cathedral. It says they are guardians of a Gothic masterpiece. It says gargoyles originated in medieval Europe and were incorporated into the design of churches and cathedrals to serve a practical purpose. Well, what's the practical purpose? Well, they said it was used to help as part of their rainwater management system. They channeled water away from the building's walls and foundations. They say it's just a water spout, and they made it look like this. So another name for a gargoyle is grotesque. This image is on the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, France, and it is said to be a stunning example of Gothic architecture. This says France is home to a vast array of gargoyles and grotesque, each with its own history and significance. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. But rarely will people question the explanations given for these things because the information came from religious and political leaders. Now, well, it's just history. This is another look at it. But did you know you can find a wide selection of these things for outdoor decor and accessories? Again, these things are hidden in plain sight. And I'm only showing these things so that you'll know what you're looking at. But this information says gargoyles are water spouts set high on a building that direct rainwater away from the building's walls. Most gargoyles are carved from a block of solid stone. They are made to look like animals, monsters, laughing or scowling humans, dragons, or demons. That's interesting, right? It goes on to say gargoyles have been used for more than 2,000 years. They were most popular in parts of Europe during the later Middle Ages. Here we go again with the Middle Ages. During that time, the largest and most important buildings in any town was the church or cathedral. These buildings were costly to build. There were many skilled workers involved and precious metal or precious materials used. Rainwater running down the walls would eventually ruin the building. Therefore, workers carved decorative statues to act as waterspouts. Why not the image of a dolphin? Why make it look like a dragon or a demon? Now, this is an image of something called a Lincoln Imp. Now, we all know what an imp is. What does this look like to you? But this Lincoln Imp is a grotesque on a wall inside Lincoln Cathedral in England, and it has become the symbol of the city of Lincoln. The carving is situated high on the north side of the angel choir and is not conspicuous. It's like we're not trying to hide this. So the angel choir was built between 1250 and 1280, so the carving must date from then. It became well known in the late 19th century, and its associated folk tales are an elaboration of earlier traditions involving the devil hiding from wind inside the cathedral. Here are some additional stories about how this imp got there. This comes from the BBC. It says, after vandalizing the spire, the two imps headed to Lincoln Cathedral. When they arrived, the devil instructed them to cause as much mayhem as possible. The imps started by smashing up tables and chairs and tripping up the bishop. You all, are you hearing this? Tripping up the bishop. And then they started destroying the angel choir. An angel appeared and told them to stop. One of the imps was brave and started throwing rocks at the angel. But the other imp cowered under the broken tables and chairs. The angel turned the first imp to stone and gave the second imp a chance to escape. Another story is that the imp was blown into the cathedral by strong winds. And because he was one of the devil's creatures, he began causing mischief, such as dancing on the altar and annoying those in the angel choir until they could take no more, and turned him into stone. And he sits at the top of a column near the angel choir with a mischievous grin on his face. Another version of the story with two imps is that they were sent by the devil to cause trouble in the cathedral, and they soon started to annoy the angels in the cathedral. The angels told the two imps to leave, but the first started to throw things at the angels and the second hid. The angels turned the first imp to stone, but this gave the second imp a chance to escape. The second imp is said to have escaped with the help of a witch. The imp went off with the witch on her broomstick, but the witch was so fond of the imp, she turned the imp into a black cat. You all, these folks just make up some ridiculous story about these things, and people just believe it. They would rather believe the lies than believe that paganism is at the root of this religion. So obviously the power of the Most High was not in that place if an imp could just come in at will. Now here we see it on a building at Lincoln College, Oxford. In 1899 there was a reproduction of the Lincoln Imp, and it overlooked the front quad of the college. But in 2000, it was erected above the entrance to Deep Hall. It is the title of the college's undergraduate newspaper, and it's the mascot of the boat club, not to mention that their football team is called the Imps, and it appears on their crest. So in the late 19th century, a local businessman obtained the right to use the image on jewelry, and it says this contributed greatly to his fame and wealth. Now, in case you're wondering if they are here in the U.S., yes, they are. They are all over the place. Listen to this information from Ancient Origins. It's entitled The Grotesque World of Gargoyles. So it says, while gargoyles generally conjure images of Gothic cathedrals like Notre Dame and the buildings of medieval Europe, they have remained in use in modern times. The majority of modern gargoyles are the grotesque, which do not serve as drainage aids, but they are widely given the name gargoyles, and this is what most people consider them to be. They were popular in architecture in the 19th and 20th centuries, and many of the great buildings from these eras are adorned with gargoyles. One such building is the Chrysler Building in New York, which features a number of stainless steel gargoyles. The question is, if they no longer need them for drainage, why are they still putting them on the buildings? But let's go on. It says other modern gargoyles can be found on churches, particularly those constructed during the Gothic Revival. The city of Pittsburgh is home to many gargoyles and grotesque, as it became swept up in the Gothic Revival movement, and they captured the imagination of many architects. It says construction began on the Washington National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. in 1908. It has a number of gargoyles carved from limestone. Take a look at what's prominently displayed at the U.S. Capitol. It says, an American eagle stands to liberty's right, and the scroll in her right hand is the Constitution of the United States. To her left, a serpent, the symbol of wisdom, is entwined around a section of a column. It's all pointing right back to the serpent, you all. It says placed here between 1817 and 1819, when the U.S. Capitol was rebuilt after the fire of 1814, she originally looked down on the House of Representatives, which met in the hall during that time. As I said, they're all over the place. But how is it that we never paid any attention to these things? These people are serpent worshippers, and a lot of this stuff is right in your face. Now let's dig a little deeper. We're going to read some excerpts from a book called Drakon. The book was written by Daniel Ogden, and it was published by Oxford University Press. The author examines Greek and Roman narratives or stories involving fights between so-called heroes or gods and dragons and serpents. The book gives an analysis of the written sources and iconography about dragon serpent myths, including the Hydra. So it says here that some gods and heroes are repeatedly associated with Dracontes and may be considered Drakon masters or Drakon mistresses. Males and females alike are both aligned against and aligned with Dracontes, the former perhaps more often against, the latter perhaps more often with. I specifically wanted us to look at some of the images from the book. The figure on the left has Hercules with a two-headed serpent called Ladon. The second figure is this serpent in his apple tree, and he's being fed. Who or what is this creature? Well, Ladon was one of the most famous dragons talked about in Greek mythology. Now, on page 334 of the book, he inserts the image of Olympias. I mentioned her earlier. She was the wife of Philip II of Macedonia and the mother of Alexander the Greek. She was a princess. Now, on the back of the coin, you see a woman in bed with a serpent. This is supposed to be her. Why would they mint that scene on a coin? According to Plutarch, Alexander's mother was a devout member of a snake-worshipping cult of Dionysus, and he suggested that she slept with snakes in her bed. There are other historical texts quoting her claim that Alexander was actually the son of Zeus. Now, some would say, well, that's just a myth, and besides, that was a long time ago. But it's not so far-fetched when we see all of the serpent dragon-like symbology being used today. There are still some questionable behavior regarding Christians, namely the Roman Catholic Church and the serpent. Look at this. The question is being asked, why does the Pope's audience hall resemble a serpent's head and contain controversial imagery? Why, family? This was written in December of 2024. The author included this sculpture. It's in the hall and it sits right above where the Pope sits. It's very controversial. It's called the Resurrection. It's supposed to be Christ rising from a nuclear holocaust. But many have noted that the image of him is distorted and elongated and it looks like a demon. But you already know what happened, right? They began gaslighting people and told them it's not what you think it is. Don't believe your lying eyes. So when you see Catholic leaders with a crozier, with the head of a serpent or even a two-headed serpent, they want you to just keep it moving because there's nothing to see here, folks. Listen to an excerpt from this journal article entitled Revisiting Translation as Transculturation from Ancient Chinese Origin Jargon to Global Representation Dragon. Let's see if this is going to tell us about the origin of this word dragon. It says, it is important to note that the dragon, whether in Chinese or Western cultural contexts, represents the same creature, but with different interpretations. Initially, the dragon concept in Western culture, particularly in the early Sumerian civilization, resembled the Chinese dragon. However, the dragon became more closely associated with Chinese culture over time, gradually fading from Western cultural imagery. In contrast, the image and cultural significance of the Chinese dragon spread to ancient India and subsequently influenced ancient Persia and Greece. As a result, the dragon concept was predominantly linked to the serpentine snake dragon image in ancient Greece, Egypt, and India. Now, it goes on to tell us that this term drakon, which means gigantic serpent of the sea in Western languages, is precisely the English word dragon and may have originated from the ancient Chinese pronunciation of Jagron, which translates to snake dragon. It goes on to say that as dragon worship expanded in China, dragons began symbolizing power and prosperity, appearing in art, architecture, and daily life. They were associated with protective powers and prestigious figures like emperors. This transformative era in Chinese dragon cults, characterized by rich cultural exchanges, significantly influenced the development and popularity of dragon traditions in China, making them or marking them as a distinctive aspect of Chinese cultural heritage. And wouldn't you know it, 2025 just happens to be the year of the snake in China. Well, what does that mean? This People magazine article says it's time to celebrate the year of the wood snake. It says Lunar New Year, also known as the Chinese New Year and Spring Festival, marks the end of winter and the arrival of the spring season on the lunisolar calendar. Plus, it signifies the start of the new year. The Lunar New Year usually falls on the second new moon after the winter solstice and between the spring equinox during the months of either January or February. It is regarded as the most popular holiday in China and Chinese communities around the world. So last year was the year of the dragon, and 2025 is the year of the snake. Is this in your face or what? Now, what's interesting, and I'm sure it won't be surprising to some of you, is that the KKK also uses a lot of imagery and symbols of dragons to include dragon names. So listen as I share some excerpts on their organization and principles. Now, according to them, they acknowledge the majesty and supremacy of the divine being. Many just assume that they're talking about the Most High. But are they? If that's so, why are so many of these titles tied to the occult? Listen, the Grand Wizard, who is the supreme officer of the empire, shall have power, and he shall be required to appoint grand dragons for the different realms of the empire, and he shall have power to appoint his genie. His genie? Let's go on. So it says the grand dragon is the chief officer of the realm. Let that sink in. And he has the power to appoint and instruct a grand titan for each dominion of his realm. Now that's interesting. So it shall be his duty to report to the grand wizard when required by that officer the condition, strength, efficiency, and progress of the order within his realm, and to transmit through the grand titan or other authorized sources to the order all information, intelligence, or instruction conveyed to him by the grand wizard for that purpose, and all such other information or instruction as he may think will promote the interests and utility of the order. Now listen to this about the role of the Grand Titan. So he is the chief officer of the dominion. He has the power to appoint and instruct a grand giant for each province of his dominion, such as appointments, however, being subject to the approval of the grand dragon of the realm. Folks, do you think these titles are just coincidences? How about this one? The Grand Giant serves as the chief officer of the province, and he has the power to appoint and instruct the Grand Cyclops for each den of his province. Such appointments, however, being subject to the approval of the Grand Titan, and he shall have the further power to appoint his goblins. Come on now. What are we talking about here? Ephesians 6:12. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. This passage found in Revelation 20 is going to tie all of this together so that we can see who they are really worshiping. We're reading verse 2. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. So here you see that the serpent and the dragon, it's really Satan, or Hellel, the adversary, the god of this world, and the prince of the kingdom of darkness. Now make sure you understand that these are principalities, princes, supernatural entities that represent spiritual wickedness in high places. And it says they are the rulers of the darkness. If you can understand that, then you can also understand that they have agents of darkness in league with them. There is a serpent seed in the earth, and they are doing the bidding of their father. The only way to stand against it is to be completely submitted to our Heavenly Father. When we submit ourselves unto Him and resist the evil one, he has to flee. So don't give in to it, family. You have to resist. We'll end it here and continue the discussion next time. If this message has been a blessing to you, please hit the like and share it. You're also welcome to subscribe if you have not already done so. We normally upload messages on Sunday mornings at 8:30 a.m. Yah willing. Join me next time.